So the next question is related to Sultan of Delhi. The question is ki who introduced Sajda? Sajda introduced by Balban. Balban was the slave ruler. Slave dynasty was founded by Qutbuddin Aibak, but the real founder was Iltutmish. बलबन ने ही जो है स्टार्ट किया था सिजदा एंड पैबोस। ये 40 गुलामों का सरदार था। बाद में उसने वो चौगान को जो है उसने 40 सरदारों के उस ग्रुप को डिस्ट्रॉय किया था और खुद राजा बना था। नाउ
Now this is a very easy problem from time, speed and distance subtopic trains. This question is based on simple formula, which is the length of the train, that is 100 meters, and the length of the bridge that it has to cross, which is what we need to find out here. Let's put this as L, divided by the speed of the train, which is 54 meters per second. So the first thing that we do is, since the length of the train is given in meters and the time taken to cross the bridge is 20 seconds, we need to convert kilometers per hour into meters per second. So we know that 54 kilometers per hour, to convert this into meters per second, we will just multiply this by 5 by 18. Therefore, this becomes 15 meters per second. Distance upon speed. Now, since bridge has got no speed, therefore it will just be the speed of the train here. That is equal to 15 meters per second. And therefore distance upon speed is equal to time. Time here is 20 seconds. Right? So, when we solve this, we'll get L is equal to 200.
Hi everyone. So today we'll be discussing critical reasoning questions from past year papers of NLSIU Nalsar, NLU Jodhpur, and we'll be discussing these answers with you. So I hope you have solved the papers and are now ready with your answers. And then both of us can then collaborate each other's answers and we can discuss and analyze these questions. So the first set that you can see is of 5 questions, and there are certain propositions which follow. So these propositions could be conclusions, assumptions, inferences, any, since the word proposition has been used, and we have to encircle one which fits most with the thought given in the argument. So let's move on. Alright, the first one is, since all rabbits I have seen have short tails, all rabbits probably have short tails. Now we have to choose an answer which parallels the reasoning given over here. So if you check the format over here which is given in front of you, all rabbits that I've seen have short tails, right? So I'm highlighting this for you. If I take rabbits to be P, so all P have Q, the conclusion is all P have Q. So this conclusion is the same as the given premise. Now we have to see what parallels here. So if you look at question option number A, all social systems, let's take to be P, that I've studied have sexual taboos, that is Q. All of these taboos, Q, have probably had survival value for the human race, which is R. So all P have Q, now in the conclusion translates into all Q have R. So does not match with our mother statement. Let's move on to B. All chemical reactions that I've seen, that means all P did not make dramatic changes, so the dramatic changes is Q. Only minor changes. So now Q changes to minor changes, which is Q minus. Right? Dramatic's opposite is minor. So all P did not make Q. A conclusion is all Q minus. So from here only we can remove option C. Now we move on to the last one, which is option B. Sorry for the previous one. Now we move on to the last one, which is C. All kitchenware that I have seen are made of metal. So all P are made of Q. Q is then the most desirable material for kitchenware. So Q is led from P. So PQ is matched in option C.
Okay, if we look at para jumbles, then it is very important that we understand that whenever we are solving a para jumble, we must always try and identify a mandatory pair. So when you read the question, don't just look at your options, but try and identify a mandatory pair. Now, if you look at this question here, now this question says these substances were the new chemicals patented during and after World War II, such as DDT and insecticide that found wide favor among farmers and scientists. Now, the minute I see these substances, I know that there is going to be a link because if you remember, parajumbles will have pronouns as a very important clue for connecting a mandatory pair. So when you look at these substances, you know that there can be a mandatory pair which you will find which will connect these substances. So now when we look at these substances and we look at these sentences down the line, we'll realize that the second statement says Rachel Carson described the contamination of the environment with substances of incredible potential. So bingo, we have a clue. This one says substances of increased potential, and our first sentence is these substances. So very clearly, the second and the first statement form a mandatory pair. So that gives you one clue. Now the minute you see this and you see that 2 and 1 form a mandatory pair, then we look at our options, and option 1 and option 4 both have 2 and 1 as a option there. So see, option A says 2, 1, 3, 5, 4, and option 4 says 2, 1, 4, 5, and 3. So that's one thing that we have logged. We've eliminated options 2 and 3. Now if we look at option A again, so 2, 1 and 3. So let's quickly take a look. Will 3 come after 1 or will 3 come after 5? So let's take a look. 3 says, used for a worthy purpose to increase food production by eliminating pests, these manipulated chemicals became in Carson's colorful language elixirs of death and a battery of poisons of truly extraordinary power. Now, because these are talking of these manipulated chemicals, and that does not come anywhere in in statement number 1, so then 2, 1, 3 cannot be a mandatory pair. So, of course, then that brings us to 4 or D as our correct choice.
Hello students, I welcome you all to the discussion of important questions which shall be relevant for this year's CLAT. Now, the way I have handpicked these questions is I have started from the NLS papers and in the descending order beginning from 2007 to 2006, 2005, so on and so forth. And whatever questions I felt would be relevant and important for this year's CLAT would of course need a discussion. I would of course be discussing in today's session. Now, I would be starting with the first question which has been taken from the NLS paper 2007. Now, if you look at the question, friends, the principle reads, a man must not make use of his property as unreasonably, unnecessarily to cause inconvenience to his neighbors. Now, this is interchangeably a principle of nuisance as well. Now, you can look at the facts on the screen, which say that Mr. Z is the owner of a plot measuring 50 feet by 80 feet. He constructed a small house at one corner and was using the rest of the land as a cow shed. He had 20 cows and is involved in selling the milk to the public. The cow dung and other waste were openly stored in a small 10 feet by 8 feet tank. This constantly paved way for bad smell and breeding of mosquitoes. Mr. X's neighbor now, of course, complains to Mr. Z, but in vain. Now, this is a very typical question on nuisance, my friends, and I would like to give you certain formulas which you can very aptly apply to these CLAT questions and NLS questions, and fetch or eventually which will fetch correct answers. Like for example, whenever there is a question on nuisance, one thing that we need to decide and ascertain after reading the question is whether the defendant's act is reasonable, yes or no. And this question can be answered by sheer common sense. Like in this question, if you see, examiner has written certain things in the question which will of course be hints and cues for you to decide whether or not the act done by the defendant is reasonable. For example, if you can see this constantly paved way, if you come to the second last line of the question, it very clearly says this constantly paved way for bad smell and breeding of mosquitoes. Now, if I ask you that would this constitute is something which is reasonable or unreasonable, I think without an iota of doubt your answer would be that this is certainly unreasonable, and therefore the best answer for this question should be D. Now, these questions can come with a lot of twists and variants. Let us now discuss a few twists and variants that can, of course, be a part of the question. Let us say that we twist this original LNS question a little bit and we add one more thing, which is that when Mr. Z owns the plot, when, of course, Mr. Y, let us say, come to buy this plot, he had already seen or he already had the knowledge of the fact that Mr. Z had been operating a cow shed from his house and he had been doing so for n number of years, 10, 15, whatever it may be. Now, your question is that the fact that I already knew about the nuisance, would it have any impact on the question? And now the answer, my friends, is again fairly simple. The fact that I already knew about the nuisance doesn't mean that I have given my consent to be subjected by it. So there are a lot of questions which have come in the past year papers wherein you will see that of course a person buys a house and right next to the house there's an industrial unit which has been emitting poisonous gases 24/7 for the past many years. Now, of course, when I came to buy the house, I knew that there is an industrial unit situated right next to the house. But then when I buy it and I am having breathing problems, would the defense on the part of the defendants that he had already consented to the nuisance be valid? Absolutely not. If the work done by the defendant is not reasonable, then the defense that the plaintiff had already consented or the plaintiff has already had already known about the nuisance will be of no avail, and the defendant in all such cases will be liable, and therefore even if question comes with a twist, with a teeny twist, the answer would still remain D, even if the question, of course, as I said, would come with a twist that Mr. Y already knew about the operation of the cowshed over the past many years. Let us move on to the next question, friends.